Well, I hope all of you had a great lunch. Wow, I was really impressed by what our caterer put together, and just goes to show all we have to do is ask, and small actions add up. So I'm also very excited to introduce this panel to you. What we've put the title around it is New Mexico for Good program, and I'm going to get into that in a little bit. But I have with me Don Boulware from Taski Valley, Peter Michel from New Mexico Economic Development Department, Julie Kronberger from Blue Dot Advocates and Be Local Colorado, and, and Jennifer from Florida for Good. So everyone has been, we've invested so much time and energy into this event, and sort of the big question for us and our partners has been around like, what next? So we've taken this big sort of plunge into this, idea of building a responsible community, but what comes next? And this is the session where we decide what comes next. So what we're going to do in this session is we're going to hear from Peter about his rationale for how economic development and responsible business practices are related. We're going to hear a similar line or a sort of a business case from Don in terms of the B Corp community and how, why should we build a responsible business community. We're going to hear from two exemplars, thriving Be Local community in Colorado. So Julie is going to talk to us about that, and Jennifer's come all the way from Florida to share her amazing insights with us. They're running a program called Florida for Good, so you can see the parallel. So she's going to share what that will give us is this menu of options of what is possible for us to do next. And then they're going to speak for 5 minutes each, and then I'm going to invite you to say what makes sense, what you are interested in, what you are excited about, what Anderson can do, and especially what you can do in helping us launch this program. So let's co-create this program together. At least let's start that conversation. So without any further delay, I'm going to hand over to Peter.
Good afternoon, everyone. I guess maybe I need to switch. Is that on? Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Peter Mitchell. I'm with the New Mexico Economic Development Department. And I became interested in this event. I'm also a native New Mexican. I became interested in this event after Don had put on a similar event up in Taski Valley that our department and the New Mexico Partnership, which is a contractor of ours that recruits out-of-state and international businesses, we both sponsored this event that Don put on in the Ski Valley. And I thought when I watched the event, I said, we need to get visibility out for this type of business. And so probably a week or two later, I emailed Don and I said, Don, can we build on this? Can we go the next step? And Don said, well, I know a bunch of really smart people down at UNM Anderson who have been working on this for a long time. And so she introduced me to Garima, to Wellington, to Ryan in the back, and the five of us had a little meeting where we just kind of brainstormed a little bit about it. And apparently these three are great politicians because they sold it and got full support of the school. The school's doing great things. And so I wanted to, before I get into my spiel, I wanted to thank all the UNM team for supporting this. I think it's a critical initiative. And my interest in this is selfish in a way because it's selfish and it's self-serving because it's the same interest as the governor and our cabinet secretary. This hits a lot of the buttons that are really important to the leadership of New Mexico right now. We want sustainable businesses, we want environmentally responsible businesses, and we also want to stimulate the outdoor economy here. I don't know if you all saw, we've got a new department, new division for outdoor recreation. That's the reason the governor couldn't come, because they're all down at the Outdoor Recreation Conference in Silver City right now. But I think the purpose of this and what Garima says is so important is to build on this. I want to get to the point where we have a slide similar to Kim's slide that shows that we have 30, 100 B Corps in New Mexico and build that critical mass, because I believe the culture of this management philosophy is infectious. And I think people, the more we build this critical mass, people will see New Mexico as a bastion for this type of business, and they'll come here. And I think we'll also have our students will believe in this type of business environment, and we'll have a workforce that's trained to excel in this. So that's my little skin in the game, but I'm really excited about this whole thing, and thanks again to all the team at UNM.
Don?
Okay. So as Peter alluded to, last February, we held an event called Be Inspired, and it was an out-facing event. As Kim talked about, 2 years ago, we had the Be Leadership around, and it was just when we first certified, and the community and our staff were like, we want to be involved. So we worked with B Lab on creating this Be Inspired Day, and it was exactly that. And I reached out to Peter for a little financial help on it, and he responded, and they came up, and he had a great conversation with Jay, one of the founders of B Lab, and this whole thing has just evolved. A few months prior to that, I had met Garima at a B Corp Champions retreat. I had no idea anybody in New Mexico at UNM was studying any of this. So I went into a session, I didn't attend it, and I said, I would love for us to have a conversation once we get back. And what I'm learning as being part of the B Corp community is that we collectively have so much more of an impact together than we do staying in our little silos. And in a state like New Mexico, I'm also a native New Mexican. I'm a native Tausteña and fourth generation. And I know that there are so many problems that our state faces on a daily basis. And we're constantly at the end of every list, right? And we're only going to solve those if we can all come together and start addressing this. As an example of that, David this morning alluded to our involvement in the Rio Grande Water Fund, and that has been an incredible collaborative nature conservancy nonprofit leading it, but involving government, national government, the U.S. Forest Service, Fish and Game, the pueblos throughout New Mexico, businesses to help support it, right? Water is one of those very critical things in New Mexico that we all need to survive. And for all of us to come around and work on that issue together is really moving the needle and doing what's needed to do to protect all of the water we need in New Mexico. So I think that was part of my excitement about trying to get this community to move forward, especially in New Mexico. Obviously, I think it was great to hear in the Responsible Business panel, they were all native New Mexicans. So I think there's a group of people in New Mexico who care deeply about this place and just want to see us be better. And this is one of our opportunities to do so.
Thank you, Don. Would you like to come up here, John, for great slides?
All right, thank you. I'm happy to be here. I flew up from Orlando where it rains every day, and I think I brought it. I'm sorry. The cold weather sure is different. I'm used to 100 degrees, and I woke up this morning, it was like 55 and freezing. I didn't even bring a jacket. But I'm happy to be here to support New Mexico, Believe in New Mexico. We heard about this program earlier this year when Garima reached out to Jared and I. Jared is the co-founder of Florida for Good, and she reached out, wanting to know what our program does, what it's like, that New Mexico would like to do the same type of thing. So we were honored because Florida for Good was only started about 1.5 years ago, and it was started in Florida because not many people, it's kind of like New Mexico, there's a lot of businesses doing good, but not many of them know that they can get certified. Not many of them know that they should be an inspiration to other businesses by telling other businesses what they're doing. They're humble, they're busy working their business day in, day out. They don't have time to tell the world how good they are. So we're trying to let them know that, hey, you really should get out there and let people know. So Florida for Good, like I said, was started about 1.5 years ago, and it was started by a co-founder named Jared Myers, and he owns 2 B Corp companies in Florida. And Florida right now has about only 22 B Corps. So I guess if you do the math, Jared's like 10% of the B Corps in Florida. So when he began certifying his companies a couple years ago, he said that he couldn't find any resources in Florida to help him decide, what to do. He knew he wanted his businesses to become better, more responsible, more resilient, but he didn't know how. So throughout all of his research, he came upon B Corps, and because they are third-party verified, they are very credible, he went all in. And after his businesses became certified, one of them is Legacy Vacation Resorts, which is the first B Corp hospitality resort company that is a multi-state entity in the United States. So he was the first one to do that, which was incredible. His other company is a development company. And through his two companies, he wanted to create Florida for Good to be a resource for other companies to help them learn how to become better. So that's where Florida for Good was born. And he and I met through, I was the marketing director for a bank. It was a B Corp bank in Florida, and he was one of our customers. And in the process of our bank getting acquired, because when the bank was started, Benefit Corporation wasn't approved in Florida yet, so it wasn't baked into their structure when the shareholders came on board, and the shareholders wanted to sell. So when we were acquired, Jared went to the owner, Ken LaRoe, and said, hey, I have this Florida for Good organization. Who can you recommend to help grow this? So that's where I came in, and I'm so happy to go from one B Corp company to another. And so it's been a great transition. And I wanted to go through some slides to show you what our Florida for Good does and what Believe in New Mexico is looking to kind of mimic in a way. And other states are wanting to do this too. So we've got Wisconsin that wants to start something like what you are doing here. And Georgia wants to, and there's a couple other states that want to do the same type of program. So it is needed. So let me run through the slides. So Florida for Good. When it was created, just organically, other chapters started forming from the business community. Some of them were headed by B Corps in that area, but they were saying, we want to network with our own local area. We want to talk about best practices within this area. So we've got we've got Jacksonville, that's our Northeast Florida. Central Florida is Orlando, that's the one I started. St. Pete, over by Tampa. And then just recently, Boca for Good. It's our first student-led chapter. It's out of a university, and we're launching that actually in 3 days. I'm going down there for their panel. And it is fun. And For Good Movement, that logo in the middle there, that's our nonprofit arm of Florida for Good. And we use that for just to create other partnerships, because sometimes Florida for Good is set up as a for-profit business, even though we are run like a nonprofit. We don't charge for anything. But there's a lot of nonprofits that they feel better about partnering with another nonprofit. So that's why we started For Good Movement as part of that. And this is just a little bit about Florida for Good. We call ourselves a connector. So because there aren't many resources in Florida to help businesses and to help everyone network together, we are the Conscious Capitalism group. We are the Be Local group. We're the 1% for the Planet group. We're all of that. We're just kind of all encompassing. And then as the smaller chapters pop up, they are the same thing. They are the Conscious Capitalism group in their area. So we find that it works for Florida that way. It may not work for your region, or your state, but it works for Florida. So this is, let me show you a little bit about our website. Our biggest end goal is to have companies run through the B Corp certification process. So, but we're there to help them along the way. We're there to have the event that shows a business, like the panel that was up here right before lunch. Some of them didn't even know what B Corp was. That's what Florida for Good does. We create awareness. So our end goal is to measure their impact. So right on our homepage, we have, you go into Florida for Good, the first button you see, measure impact. It's free. And something cool that Florida for Good does is we pay B-Lab for the analytics on the B impact assessment for Florida groups. So that allows us to help businesses as they're going through. If they only have 30 points, we have the analytics to say, well, why don't you put into place this policy? Or why don't you beef up your environmental area this way and you'll get this many more points? So that's another area that we help businesses in. And this is what you get when you sign up for the impact assessment. You just make your account. It's free. And this is what the analytics look like on our end. So we have an improvement button. We can, if they need assistance, we can print out a report for them to show them where they can gain more points. So it's a pretty robust system, and we're extremely happy to have that. This is another page from our website. We're, of course, our end goal is for everyone to become a certified B Corp company. So we have so many free resources on here for medium-sized businesses, for large businesses. A lot of our content comes straight from B-Lab's website, so it's a little bit redundant, and some of these even link to B-Lab's website. But we want Florida to feel like this is created for them and to keep it, with where they think that they're in a network with us. And this is just an expanded version of one of different resources. Like I said, we have a lot of events. We have an events page, so anybody in Florida can go there and they'll find any kind of sustainable event. And it has all the information when they click on each square. We have a how page. How can I become socially and environmentally responsible? And each of the items on that wheel, they can link through to other areas, and we're just showing that it's a circular economy. It's a circular process. One thing will lead to another. We have an actions you can take now section, and this is for anyone. It doesn't even have to be a business. You can go there as a consumer and learn about responsible buying. You can go there as a consumer and learn about what banks are socially and environmentally responsible. We talk about conscious capitalism. There's our nonprofit right there. And then one thing we're really proud of is we have an online business directory where businesses that are responsible can join for free. I vet each one, so I make sure that each one does belong on our directory, and it's a place for businesses to get highlighted, but it's also a place for the public to go to know where they want to spend their money. And this is a drawdown, or not a drawdown, but when you click on each directory member, they have a full page about them, so you can see their pictures, you can see what certifications and affiliations they belong to, you can see who they partner with, so it's a pretty robust directory. And we have a free resources page. It's divided into 4 categories: responsibility, B Corp, data, and impact assessment. We have a lot of collaborators. We collaborate a lot with the academia, which is why we're here. And we partner with nonprofits, we partner with government, and that is pretty much it about Florida for Good.
Thank you so much, Jennifer. So much to think about there in terms of what we can do. I'm going to ask Julie now to come up and tell us a little bit about Be Local Colorado and other things happening there.
I don't have any slides, sorry, but I do have notes. So I manage a law firm based in Colorado. We're actually kind of all over the place, but we specialize in clients that are social enterprises, B Corps, benefit corporations, doing good things for the planet. As I like to say, Blue Dot is an homage to Carl Sagan for the pale blue dot on which we all live. And we represent people who are saving the planet as opposed to the opposite. Blue Dot was the first law firm to actually be certified as a B Corp in Colorado. And since then, that was in 2013, and since then in 2017, we actually converted to a public benefit corporation, partly through the assessment and partly because we wanted to do that anyway. We also converted into a cooperative, so we're actually a worker-owned cooperative at the same time, which is also weird for a law firm, and hard to navigate since I'm not a lawyer and therefore cannot legally be an owner. But they treat me like one. The hat that I'm wearing today, as a matter of fact, is I'm on the founding board of BLocal Colorado. And for the last several years, we've really built out our infrastructure to support the B Corps that are in Colorado. As Kim mentioned earlier, we have over 100 now, right? And most of them, well, a lot of them are concentrated in Denver, which is where I live, and then Kim lives up in Boulder, and so those are sort of the creamy center of of B Corps. But through some of our organization, some of our events and everything, we do a leadership training day, which is Build, which I met some of you at, which is probably why I'm sitting here today, because I know that some of you guys came up to Denver, and we really are the support system for B Corps in Colorado. We are an offshoot of B Lab. B Lab is sort of setting their sights higher and bigger, and as a result of that, there is a void left in the communities to take over and really continue the work that B Lab has done. We have some phenomenal partnerships, obviously, with B Lab. There are also a lot of, even though we have a lot of B Corps, there's a lot of people who still need information about what a B Corp is, what the business economy can be, what cooperatives are. We have an organization that also came from B Lab that's called Best for Colorado. And the way I like to describe it is that Best for will help educate you, go through the BIA, figure out where you are in the process. And then once you become a certified B Corp, BLocal is there to provide support in really whatever way you want, learning how to record metrics and network and find events and meet other people and collaborate with HR groups and a trillion other things. We're just starting. Well, we're not just starting. We have a couple people who work within the university systems, mostly with CU Boulder. But there's a couple of, there's a lot of business schools in Colorado, and we're really looking forward to working more with DU in the Denver area, some of the smaller colleges all the way across the state. And I just want to reiterate that even though we're BLocal Colorado, we really do make a point to call ourselves BLocal Mountain West in a lot of situations. And those of you who are members of B Corps, you're welcome to contact us to utilize. We don't have quite as robust of resources as Florida for Good, but we know where to point you in the right direction so that you can find some of those things, and we're there to help. Happy to be here.
Thank you, Jenny. So what are some of the questions we have for our panelists? Yeah, John.
So from a state of New Mexico standpoint, what role do you see the Economic Development Department playing in trying to bolster this movement within New Mexico?
I think there are a couple ways. First, we need to assess what types of companies would be most susceptible to becoming B Corp certified. I also think that there are ways that we can tweak current existing incentives, perhaps, to make New Mexico more attractive to B Corp. I'll give you an example. We've had a job training incentive program, JTIP, which reimburses wages for training employees for up to 6 months, depending on the skill of the employee. we reimburse up to 50% of the wages in urban New Mexico and up to 75 with perks in rural New Mexico %. And one of the perks, there are 2 perks that are worth 5% bump in that training incentive. One is if it's a veteran-owned business, your employee, a veteran employee. 2 is if your employee was educated in a New Mexico school. So I'm thinking, and that's a 5% bump on each one of the training incentives. So I'm thinking if we propose that, and these are policy decisions made by the board and the team, we can propose a similar bump for B Corp employees too. I also think we can look down the road, and before I move on, I want to introduce my colleague, Joanna Nelson, in the back there. She's our finance guru. She'll tell you everything you want to know about our finance program. And if you have any ideas, Joanna, please jump in. But the second one is with our Local Economic Development Act, the LEDA fund. I think we can customize that down the line that maybe incentivizes B Corps as well. There was a third one. And I was just saying we recently announced, if you invest in opportunity zones, which have been created in the state, if you invest up to $15 million, you get a bump in your LEDA funding. So if you were granted X amount in LEDA assistance by the governor, if you invested 15 million or more in one of these opportunity zones, you get an automatic additional $1 million in LEDA assistance. I think we can explore ways to incentivize B Corp investment in opportunity zones as well. So, okay.
Thank you. Yeah. Other questions?
This is for Colorado and Florida. Kim had that chart that showed the growth of the number of B Corps in Colorado, and the question there is, are you seeing that same pace of growth? I mean, is this movement really taking is there a lot of momentum behind the movement? And same with Florida, you said there's 22 B Corps now. Are you seeing the same type of growth? Like, do you think, where are we in the cycle? Is this just, have we only just begun? Is there a lot of excitement and momentum, and are you enthusiastic for additional companies coming on at a rapid pace?
Sure. When Jared first began certifying his 2 companies, there were 17 B Corps, and so now there's 22. And so we are seeing momentum happening, and we're excited about it, and more companies are learning about it. That we do have 65 companies on the assessment right now trying to become a B Corp. So it's just been a slower process, just because the certification in the analytic or the analyzing portion from B Lab is kind of backlogged. So it just takes longer to get a certification than it did 2 or 3 years ago. So, but we do have a lot of momentum, and we're very optimistic that we can reach that same arc. So I'll be excited to see when we get 100.
I don't really feel super qualified to answer that question. I know that we had I also wasn't here this morning, so I apologize for that. We have had we're so lucky that we have as many as we do. We would like to see a lot more. I think some of it is backlog. I think some of it is, working in the legal field. I know that there's a couple of organizations that are finding they're stalling out at the actual public benefit what am I saying? The creation of their companies, or the conversion of their companies to public benefit corporations. That's kind of a heavy lift for some of the smaller companies. I don't see any reason to think that it's going to slow down, especially if we're doing our job in terms of Be Local. So I'm really looking forward to doing a lot more outreach to people that are not necessarily B Corps yet. The way I like to describe it is that every single person that I run into who has either worked, who has heard of a B Corp, is curious about it, and who works for a B Corp loves their job. And it's so easy to talk someone into, being interested in it. So it's really a matter of all of us going out, all of us learning what it is, and then going out and spreading the word. I think that's, yeah, please.
David, awesome question. I was going to show a slide, actually, because I see these 3 markets as really interesting in terms of that arc. And I think of New Mexico as kind of in the incubation phase, with a group of 10 or so B Corps that are prominent and really invested in this, and they are forging things like this. They're like sparking what's about to like explode in New Mexico. Florida's right in that that point where it's just about to take off, because they've really painstakingly, carefully thought through how to build that community of practice, all the connections that Jennifer just talked through, all the right organizations they've connected with, engaging towns and economic development offices, is like all happening right now. So I think we're gonna start seeing that hockey stick kind of thing. What happened in Colorado is once the B-Lab team kind of stepped back and stopped beating the drum for more, it really became more about community and about deepening the bonds that were already in place. And so a lot of their gatherings, like they have a really cool one that's gonna happen at Planet Bluegrass in a couple weeks. They do a lot more networking, and they're going deep inside the companies to kind of build a community of practice and trust. So even though the numbers kind of hockey sticked and then started tapering off, what we have is a lot more deep investment from those companies, and they play a role with economic development in that the stories of those companies, even though, we're in the 100 somewhere, economic development uses their bully pulpit to tell the stories of those companies, to be that magnet for new ones to come in. So I think you talked about critical mass. I think somewhere around the 100 zone in a state feels like, I don't know, it's very anecdotal, but it felt like to me like a really important number to get to, because then you have enough distribution across the state to tell those stories consistently, and to have it be like a continuing well of growth in the rest of the state.
Being here. Perfect.
Yeah. My question is about marketing promotion. It seems to me that until customers or clients know more about what B Corp really is, that you really are going to be tugging at people one by one, convincing them that becoming a B Corp would be a good idea. But if there were a lot more knowledge among ordinary folks about, let's say, if Dion's becomes a B Corp, and it's got B on everything, pretty soon, a whole bunch of people in this general area are going to know a lot more about B Corp, and when they see it on another company's website, they're going to say, wow, I think I'll get my solar from that company or something like that. So there has to be a promotional component to selling, or just simply informing what B Corp is. I was curious about whether Florida, since you're sort of in that midpoint there, do you have a kind of a promotional strategy, not to potential B Corps, but to the general public, the buying public, the client public, that will help then to kind of be a pull as opposed to a push?
Yeah, that's a great question, and you touched on it. We do have two audiences. We have the business audience, and then we have the public. And as far as the public goes, B-Lab has, they hired a new CEO for marketing, which was great. And with her came a public campaign, and they sent assets to every B Corp company, all 3,000 B Corp companies. And it was a vote every day campaign, where we were to share it out, and it was like vote with your dollar. When you buy cheese in the store, why don't you buy Cabot cheese? It's a B Corp. So the Vote Every Day campaign was something that we have been pushing out to the public. And the Business Roundtable article that we heard about earlier, that was a huge boost in just talking and getting normal everyday people talking about, well, what is this B Corp thing? So you're right, we do have two types of marketing that we do, and two types of events that we do. We do workshops for businesses, but we have to do community events to let people know that they should patronize these B Corp companies.
Just because I have the mic.
Yeah.
But when you think about college students, undergraduates, or even the youth, is the campaigning doing the same thing to market to them, to educate them, and to get them involved in these initiatives and get their mindset starting to change in that way?
Yes, great question. In Florida, what we have found is that the universities, just like this one, they want to be partnering with us because their students want it, they're asking for it. And so the teachers that are teaching sustainability, they're going into also teaching about B Corp certification, and the students they want that information. They want to know what companies that they want to go work for, or they want to know what kind of companies they want to start their own business up as. So our marketing is through professors at the different universities in Florida.
we do a great job of that, just FYI to all you professors here. Yeah.
I think Glenn had just, yeah.
Actually, when I was a child, I thought a Jack-in-the-Box was one of the cruelest toys ever made. So I'm a little uncomfortable right now. I think that Colorado and New Mexico have a lot in common, from outdoor recreation, technology transfer. You know, one of the things we think about are, you know, institutions like this, but we also have 2 national labs. When you look at the businesses that are becoming B Corp certified in Colorado, what do they look like? Is it across the board? Is it a lot of outdoor rec, a lot of technology? One of the things that we've tried to do and to stress in the legislative session is this is a good way to keep all these startups here, because that age group and that demographic really kind of get, you know, what it means to be certified. Can you kind of give a profile of what you've got there?
Yeah, I mean, I think, this sort of talks to the last question as well. And I'm going to step on Kim's lines here, but Danone is the biggest B Corp, and we happen to have them in Colorado. And in terms of the campaign and marketing, they're really stepping up the vote with your dollar. Is the plan still to have all of their packaging have the B Corp logo? And yeah, I mean, you're going to start seeing it on grocery store shelves, and the logo hopefully will become more and more and more prolific as the bigger companies, which is what B Lab is concentrating on, is really getting companies that have that kind of power. And then to switch over to your question in terms of what types, it's really all across the board. I mean, we have people who own their own business. There's everything from consulting companies to law firms to, outdoor industries to, yeah, it's all over the place. Natural foods is a really big one, and that's, there's a lot of concentration of that. Pardon? Cannabis, not so much, really.
He stole my question, unfortunately, but I can come up with a new one. I'm wondering, so this is all kind of about homeostasis, right? We can rely on each other. I'm wondering, how can we keep tipping the scale and showing that and really demonstrating that if we don't put homeostasis first, the economic breakdown, ecological breakdown, all of that takes over? Any thoughts on, obviously self-selected groups come first, but then where can we aim? Where are the resistance zones?
Don, would you like to answer?
Awesome. I know. Must be one of your students, Karima. That's a fantastic question. I'm going to go back to what I was saying earlier. I think our experience, especially with the Nature Conservancy and how they've put together the Rio Grande Water Fund, was just so informing of how you can bring all different types of stakeholders in and to really focus on something that is so crucial, and move the needle on it. It takes a lot of patience, and a lot of patience with each other, and a lot of inclusion, right? And I think really that's the amazing part about being part of the B Corp community is, I just want to clarify. So the assessment is not stagnant, okay? B Lab is constantly revising it. I think the one we're currently recertifying under is the 6th since the B Corp movement started. So they're constantly looking at the assessment, getting feedback from the community on how to hold people to those standards or companies to those standards. So it's constantly evolving, right? Just as we all need to, as we face some really challenging things in our world. And I think, again, that collaboration and bringing all aspects into it, and being as inclusive and diverse as possible of those voices in that collaboration is just going to make us all that much better. Was that helpful? Okay.
And just to add on to that, I tell a story. One of the first, when I first came in, I was in the Governor Johnson's administration. That shows how old I am. And during that time, we had a real boom in rural call centers coming to New Mexico. We located them, Espanola, Grants, Alamogordo, Taos. I mean, we had them everywhere. And they came in, they disappeared into the wind right away. But during that period, I asked one of the CEOs of these call centers, I said, why is it that you all are coming to New Mexico? Why now? And his answer was really depressing. He said, because you are the last source of cheap rural labor in the country. We've already tapped out South Dakota, Iowa, the Corn Belt. So we're coming here because you're cheap and you're rural. And I thought, and this came back to the B Corp stuff, and I thought, wouldn't it be neat if the companies came to us for the right reasons? Because we have the talent, we've got the dream of the B Corp, we give back to our communities. That would be a powerful message, and that'd be something I'd really want to hear, rather than that message I heard 20 years ago.
Thank you. So I'm also hoping we can spend a little bit of time also together thinking through what a New Mexico for Good program could look like. You know, what are some of the things Anderson can do? What are some of the things you're interested in seeing and you're willing to collaborate and do? So any reactions on what, out of all that we heard, what are some of the things we can do to sustain this momentum?
I love the local movement, but I think from this standpoint, we're looking at it from or it needs to incorporate a corporate focus with, which may or may not be popular in some cases, but honestly, profit and performance. That does need to be part of the bottom line, I think. Otherwise, this may not get as much traction in all areas that we want it to. And so one thing I just keep coming to is we love local. I'm at a local bank here in town, but just because you're local doesn't mean you're actually good. And so that's one critical element for sustainability. So in the banking space, just because I'm local, well, that's somewhat irrelevant. Like, I have to be better than everybody else. And so I think that's probably one of the most important things you guys could try to focus on is actual performance. And B Corps are not just, it feels good, we're doing the right thing, but no, look at the actual financial performance.
Mm-hmm. Thank you.
Whoops. Yeah, I had a similar question. If anybody's done a study of any of the businesses that have switched over to B Corp, can you show that they had a better bottom line result? You know, is there a testimonial around that? I was an examiner for Quality New Mexico here for 7 years, and I asked that question every year. Is anybody who's gone through this program doing better? And there was some generic things they gave me, but I could never get to one company I could say, yeah, we had a 4% increase or 10% increase. Boy, if you could show that, I'm helping students start businesses all day long. That's what I teach here. And boy, if I could say, let's start out with that in mind, and you're going to end up in a better position 5 years from now. So is that anywhere in Colorado or where you can show results? Oh, you ready?
I think there's an answer. Is there an answer there? Because we should address it, yeah.
So I just wanted to answer your question from personal experience. We got certified. I'm David Cantor from Longview Asset Management in Santa Fe. We were certified in May, and we're the first financial services B Corporation in New Mexico. And we've had a almost 40% increase in assets under management this year. Mm. It's not entirely due to the B Corp. There are other factors, but I think it made a big difference.
Well, I can see where you have increase in revenue, and then if you had some way to decrease your costs, so you end up with more profitability.
And I think, Stacy, a little bit of it is also because the companies who get certified, they do disclose their financial performance, but B Lab doesn't disclose the financial performance to the world. So like as researchers, we don't have access to that data to be able to run those numbers. But the anecdotes like these help, I guess. But I think if together we get a B analytics platform, we can definitely run numbers like that.
To answer your question about what can we do, in New Mexico to move this effort forward. So I'm Giovanna Rossi with Family Friendly New Mexico, and I'm going to be on a panel in the next session. But just to contribute to this conversation, I think one important piece of your question is to look at what's already happening in New Mexico and to partner with organizations like ours that are already doing some of that, right? So we don't do B Corp, but we celebrate and encourage businesses to adopt family-friendly workplace policies. And we actually do come from a very business-centered focus where we talk about the business case for it and the profit, and we do have some hard numbers and research that we use with our businesses. And we've been around since 2015. We have over 200 employers in our program, impacting over 100,000 employees in New Mexico. And so I'd be very interested in where we can leverage based on what we've already done.
Wonderful. Thank you.
I have maybe not an answer to your question, but I know that you don't have benefit legislation here, but in one of the things when you become a public benefit corporation is that you have to do annual impact reports. And so the measurement of that is kind of hard, but financial impact is definitely one of those pieces. I mean, the idea is the triple bottom line, and that doesn't necessarily mean that it's a third, a third, a third. It's it's not pie. There's enough of everything for everyone. The other thing that I will say is just having been involved in Be Local, having been to several champions retreats, having been intimately working with B Lab and other companies, especially in the service industry and also the clients that we serve as a law firm. I don't think that there's any way to argue with the fact that if your employees are happier, they're working harder. I mean, I know a lot of people that work for service companies that have Family Leave Act, they have as much time off as they want, and they work harder than people who punch a time clock. And it's, I was just thrilled to hear the natives, all the New Mexico natives that were up here, especially the food industry, where you're dealing with a 17-year-old who comes in, and if they've got initiative and they're interested in what you're doing. We just went through a recruiting process at the law firm, and the people who had the standard application of I'm a lawyer, I want to make a lot of money, I want to help businesses, I could tell them immediately. There were the people that had that spark of passion and that spark of entrepreneurship that those are the people that we're trying to target, and I think that those are the people that just sort of organically are going to increase bottom lines. But it's not the most important thing.
And I wanted to expand upon what Giovanni was saying, where going forward for New Mexico for Good, what you can do is use what is already in place. So finding out earlier today about the ethical and sustainable awards, that can be your pipeline. Those are your people, and they may not know about B Corp certification. So that's where you can educate and get them onto the BIA.
Wonderful. Thank you.
Can I ask a question of a panelist? Jennifer, how are you funded? I didn't see that in the presentation. What's the picture look like?
Sure. Even though we're for profit, we run like a nonprofit, so we do not take in any money. So right now it is solely funded by Jared's two B Corp companies. Yeah, and he's being very generous with that. And I'm the only full-time employee on there, so Jared and I are running this. And our main goal is, in a couple of years from now, it will be sustainable without Jared's companies.
Thank you, because I think that's really important to building this whole next picture. Figuring out what organizations are involved and how we can kind of take best practices from each one and incorporate them in this recruitment program or in this B Corp program.
Thank you.
I had a quick question along the lines of what Peter just mentioned. This is an open-ended question, but is there a network or an ecosystem or infrastructure that has been identified in New Mexico yet that is supportive of B Corp development? I'm curious if that assessment has been done, and has it been done in Colorado or Florida to identify supportive organizations that can help the B Corps?
I know in other states, city government and statewide government are funding some of the B local groups. In Florida, that has not happened yet. But funding can come from so many different areas. It could be from like sponsorships from B Corp companies. It could be from other companies that aren't B Corps, but they want to be known as, hey, we're doing a good thing in this movement, and we're supporting them in any way that we can.
I know in Colorado, one of the things that Be Local is trying to do, like some of our next steps. And one thing, just in terms of the funding, like, you know, the people that have put together Be Local Colorado, there were 9 people on the original board. Kim was one of them. And we now are in the process of recruiting a lot more. We're all 100% volunteers. None of us are paid. Did you know we hired Misha? Misha used to be with B-Lab, and we just hired her to get through the end of the year to help us with some of our administrative stuff. But one of the things that we want to do going forward is because we have so many B Corps, we really want to kind of be the Chamber of Commerce for the B Corp movement. And rather than reinvent the wheel and become the Chamber of Commerce for the B Corp movement, we're working with and talking to people that are working in the existing chambers. And the whole goal of this is not to get more B Corps, it's that this is how business is done at, business as usual. And that's a stretch goal, obviously, but the baby steps that we can take to get there involve volunteering, word of mouth, infrastructures that are already in place, getting people excited about what's possible, and, collaboration and communication.
And to answer your question, Joanna, that's why we're here today. This is what we're trying to get started in the movement and pushing this message forward.
Yeah, so that's what I was going to say is I moved back to New Mexico 20 years ago, and immediately I published a list called NM Netlinks, which you can go to that website, but there's 3,000 links on there to jobs, events, and resources. So last night I cut through that and came up with 60 groups that I think tie to this, which would include Sustainable ABQ, you've got Renewable Energy Industries Association, Bioneers up in Santa Fe, Blue Green New Mexico, Dreaming New Mexico. I mean, there's 60 groups I have on this list, so I made copies for when I'm speaking, but I'm happy to make some more and have them here for you. But this is not an exhaustive list. I know I'm just taking my original list of 3,000 and trying to figure out what else I have. But I know just hearing today, there was a couple you mentioned, a couple of people mentioned, I thought, oop, missed it, but that's okay. So this I can give you to put online to give to everybody too. So
Thank you.
happy to do that. Yeah, take that out.
I just wanted to make another comment based on the comment from Florida over here. So Family Friendly New Mexico, we give an award out for two businesses that have family-friendly policies in the workplace. So, paid leave and health and wellness, and we just added a new level that includes pay equity and diversity and inclusion and community engagement. So that's that. And then we partnered with the Las Cruces Green Chamber because they do a sustainability award already. So she, down in Las Cruces, created like a triple P program of her own. So there's all these really innovative, interesting things going on that could be really useful for you. The other thing I want to just mention really quick is that the governor just today announced with Family Friendly New Mexico, we did a sort of a joint release of the news that the state of New Mexico is officially now the very first recipient of the platinum level award that we give out for the whole of New Mexico. So as the largest employer, we thought it was really important that the state be a model for other businesses and employers on how to do this. So that just came out today. Yeah.
Well, so many great insights, and I hope we continue this dialogue. And in fact, I'm going to ask Joe Wise to sort of come up and tell you a little bit about how you can stay involved in this dialogue.
Thanks. So this is the exciting part where we talk about money, right? So real quick, and it was just brought up a few minutes ago, is how is this funded? How we get we're talking about this incredible potential program here in New Mexico, and we're at the very early stages of that. So what we're going to need from you folks in this room, for other people who were here earlier today, because there seemed to be some sort of exodus after lunchtime, and for other people that we know that are interested in this programming, who are interested in sustainability for New Mexico, about doing the right things in our community and our business culture and things like that. The Anderson School is already doing amazing things, and I think we've seen some of that today, under Garima's leadership. But what we really need is the funding to make these things happen. And that's where I come in. We've set up a fund here at the Anderson School, and we need help in funding the programming for this, the research, putting this together. The Anderson School is happy to take on and kind of, do a lot of this legwork and corral this group and continue to do these conferences and really be, the ones to move this movement forward. But what we're going to need is the financial backing to do that. So I'll be around afterwards. I'm not asking people to raise their hand at this moment in time and say, yeah, I'm in for $100,000 right now. But if you want to do that, thank you for volunteering. This is great. I've got your checkbook. But seriously, I mean, if you're interested in doing that, I want to have that conversation. I've got my business cards. And even if you're willing to help out and make other introductions as well, we want to be having these serious conversations, because if we're all serious about moving this thing forward, it is going to take financial resources to do that. The business school is happy to do the work, but we're going to need a commitment on a lot of different levels to make this happen. So that's all I wanted to say. Thanks for the 2 minutes.
And before we end, so like Joe said, of course, financial support, but also on our website, there's a form called New Mexico for Good. Even if you're not ready to vote with your wallet, but we want you to vote with your ideas too and your energy too. So if you can fill in this information that, yes, you want to stay involved in this dialogue, then we will keep your information. Whenever we have these conversations, we'll keep you involved. So please go to the website and do fill this form. I want to help me thank our panelists for a great, splendid job.